it's now my pleasure to introduce our very special guest speaker. It was back in the mid-1970s that he teamed up with a guy named Steve Jobs, and the two of them would go on to found Apple Computer, and the rest, as they say, is history. After leaving Apple, he went on to become a cultural icon and a passionate philanthropist devoted to passing on his passions in mathematics and electronics to grade students and their teachers, and in the process, changed the lives of many students for the better. He has also received the highest honor bestowed on Americans' leading innovators, the National Medal of Technology, and was inducted into the Innovators Hall of Fame. It goes without saying that we are honored to have him here. We're also thrilled that our own IBM Fellow and Chief Innovator, Grady Booch, is also here with him. So please welcome Grady Booch and Steve Wozniak.
It didn't.
Good to talk with you here in the Windy City.
Likewise, you have the coolest watch. Tell us about this thing.
Oh, well, I like to grab unusual geek gadgets, so this watch is one of them. Little old Nixie tubes made 40 years ago, and they were made for calculators before LEDs, and when I turn my wrist, hours and minutes get displayed, and it's the coolest watch in the world.
Even works in the bathtub, you said?
I don't wear it because it's geeky and unusual. I was going to wear it for 1 week, show it to my gadget friends, go back to my beautiful watch with beautiful hands and dial and all that, and I put it on, and my head is more pleasant. I like the same thing with computers.
Yeah.
Whenever I use something, it seems to be just natural the way I think. 9:54, it's the way I would speak.
Sweet, sweet.
My brain does less work, and that's what computers are supposed to do for us.
You do so many innovative things like that. You were telling me the story backstage of the time you were in Vegas and the floppy disk and Steve. So those three stories come together. Tell us that
Oh,
story.
the floppy disk. Okay, well, we came out with our Apple II computer long ago, and it had stored programs on cassette tape. You put it in your cassette tape reader and read it in for a minute, beep, you got a program. So we were in a staff meeting, and the first time ever they were going to allow personal computers in the CES show in Las Vegas, the City of Lights. And our marketing guy, Mike Marklow, was going to go, and our sales guy, Gene Carter, and Steve Jobs. And I was way too shy to ever say, oh, will you pay my way to Vegas? I want to see what the city looks like. So instead I said, if we have a floppy disk in 2 weeks, can we show it? And Mike Marklow says, yes. And oh my gosh, I've never worked with a disk drive in my life. I've never studied them. I've never done anything with a disk operating system. But I knew that if in 2 weeks I developed some hardware that could write data on a disk and read it back, and you could type run checkbook and it would run a program, I get to go to Vegas. And motivation, they talk about extrinsic motivation, which is your salary, your grades in school, the things that people can see, your prestige, your awards, your title. And those are motivating factors, but really when it's internal in your own brain, the intrinsic motivation factors, the personal ones, that you have a personal reason, that drives you. Boy, I worked day and night, every day, including Christmas and New Year's. We wound up 6 in the morning in the convention center here in Las Vegas. We got that thing working, run checkbook.
Now, I understand the other event that happened while you were in Las Vegas is you also taught Steve craps.
Yeah, that's true. Taught Steve Jobs how to play craps here because, well, he was younger, so he didn't know how, and I did. But I also taught Randy Wigginton, our little 17-year-old programmer, how to play. He won $35 going down the strip in the older days when it was like casino to casino, real easy to walk to.
Sweet. So let's see. You're a professional dancer. You're a rock star concert promoter. You're a writer of books. You did something in the personal computer industry, I understand. I'm not sure. I haven't read about that yet. But what are you the most proud of?
Well, oh gosh, in my life, most proud of, believe it or not, my true, honest graduation day was the proudest day of my life. I got to say that.
Graduation of...
I mean, my wife is very, very important, the most important thing, but I'm very lucky. No, I am, sometimes you are
Good
so
comeback.
lucky you know it, yeah. But yeah, my proud day was actually getting a real diploma. I went back, after Apple was successful, I thought, after a plane crash, I thought, I would have got a college degree if Apple hadn't happened. Do I now become a different person with all this wealth and managing projects and improving the wealth? Or do I be myself? And I decided to go, I was very strongly strong internal core values.
Education is very important to you because you've been a teacher for many things. You support a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Why is education so important to you?
Well, I decided when I was young, my father taught me the importance of education was where we were going to get to in life.
Yeah.
And I just always had this ideal to go back and be a fifth grade teacher, like a teacher I had loved so much in fifth grade. And I had told my dad that I wanted to be an engineer first and a fifth grade teacher second. So I went back and I taught fifth grade for 8 years, secret, no press.
Yeah.
So, and this was after Apple, but it was something I wanted to do. I wanted to have personal contact with individual young students that you've helped them in some way.
Are you still in touch?
I like that better than writing a book for $1 million.
Sweet. Are you still in touch with some of the kids you taught?
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Cool,
yeah, quite
cool,
a few of them.
cool.
They're past college now.
So, what would you say to somebody young wanting to come into the industry? What advice would you give them?
One, got to feel that inside this is where you want to be. But usually they've come to me because inside they want some connection to it. And they usually are missing tools of knowledge. They think you have to be given knowledge and find it other places. And I say you've got to go out and do your own, build your own projects. Find little things that force you to think out solutions, learn how to construct. And you've got to get to a stage that you don't necessarily get all the answers that's from what somebody has done before you. You can think out your new answers that are better. And then you know, and develop your skills. I mean, go online. There's a million places to get the basics elements and understand what the components we are to build our technology out of, and then start piecing it together. Try a few programs, and the ones that are really motivating or fun, you're going to show off to some friends, and they'll be very tiny at first, almost useless, and eventually you'll get up to something kind of useful seeming, and you'll show it off and be proud, you know. And it's a way of boasting. It's a way of being proud of yourself.
In fact,
and the motivation's got to be internal.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's okay to hang out in school and then work on your own things on the side that you really want to do in life. And it's okay to have a job working for the man, you know, 9 to 5, even though you want to work on some other projects that aren't being made yet. And I mean, the Apple computers, I mean, I offered it to Hewlett Packard. 5 times they turned me down. I wanted my company to build it. They would have done it wrong, but they would have.
Did you ever offer it to IBM?
No, we didn't offer it to IBM, but boy, when we started, and we were, you know, we hadn't even sold an Apple II. We're kind of trying to get it into production, maybe 4 months, 5 months away. And Steve Jobs is sitting in there, and he's just always was so panicky. We've got to move faster than anybody else, and we've got to be, IBM is going to be outdoing us very soon. They're going to be, you know, cutting us off because we're little cheap guys. And Mike Markkula, our funder, who had a lot of experience at Intel and stock options, he said, no, we have a group of smart people. They have a group of smart people. As long as we can, you know, basically compete product-wise and create as much, we'll hold our market share.
Right, right.
But it was kind of noble that IBM got into personal computers so early. That was really respectable.
So you think the duality of the PC versus the Apple computer was a good thing for the industry? In the sense of kind of a competition.
What? I don't necessarily think about it. I think that there were a lot of problems. First of all, IBM had the marketing prowess to sell the PCs. The company might buy 2 PCs. They might buy, you know, 2 Apple IIs, 3 of them, and then here comes the PC. And around the time companies are buying 500, 1,000, 2,000 machines, and they've already got the easy purchase order methods for IBM. They know all the reps and whatever. So the marketing advantage, IBM really took the thunder when the market started moving from games into like business software.
Right. And speaking of games, your use of BASIC was because of games, as I recall. The reason you developed a BASIC interpreter.
Well, all I knew was when you're struggling with no money. Steve and I had no money. We were young, in our young 20s. We had no savings accounts. We had no friends or relatives that could loan us money. So you have to think out. You have to build an entire project all on your own. And Bill Gates had written a BASIC for the Intel chips. And I had chosen a cheaper microprocessor, the 6502, and I said, I need a BASIC. You have to have a BASIC. And the BASIC would be the key. And I wanted to do 2 things. I wanted to do productive work. Now, all I knew about computers, I didn't know how they run financial programs and all, because I'm not financial. But in my design work on Hewlett Packard scientific calculators, I would have to run simulations on a bigger computer. I want to be able to run my HP simulations, and I also want to play games. Computer games were new, they were unknown, they were text only back then, and they were just, I had seen a few, and they were just a highlight. So you have to have games, and I called my BASIC Game Basic. If you go back in all my handwritten notes, it's always Game Basic. And I just had to write it. I'd never taken a course in writing a language, but I claim I have an MIT education in it because a friend at MIT had sent me some Xerox copies of his books. So, so I knew a little bit about it, and yeah. But you know, you have to, if I don't have a basic, I don't have a computer that I can type a program in and have a solution to a problem.
Right.
So, and that was really what really impressed people at my club. Everybody would be looking over shoulders. You got this little board the size of a sheet of paper with only about 30 little $1 chips on it, and he's typing on a keyboard running BASIC. That was really impressive.
And the club you speak of is the Homebrew Club.
Yeah, Homebrew Computer Club.
You're a shy guy back then and still are. And as I recall, you didn't speak much during those clubs.
Correct. I didn't speak anywhere in life. Like when I was in classes, I'd never raise a hand. I'd sit in the back. And in the Homebrew Computer Club, I'd sit in the back row of 500 people, and I'd never once raised my hand to speak. But I listened. All these Stanford academicians and ones from Berkeley and people that were relating this new low-cost computer to how it was going to affect people and society and make us be better education. We'd be better to communicate, post a notice, and 100 people could read it right away. You know, and they would know that where you're supposed to meet instead of some other place. And oh my gosh, I was so thrilled. And that a young kid you'd take in your own computer with the software programmed by your 10-year-old at home. You'd plop it on your desk at work, you'd type in the company's financial data, and it would pop out the results. I was so impressed. I was young and naive, and I thought, wow, the small individual person is going to be more powerful than the CFO. And these things, that's why I said, I've got to build a computer for all these people that want to do these great things.
Do you think that's still true, that in the sense of the infrastructure we have now, is the individual still powerful in that way?
Oh, no. That went away very quickly. What happened was, my idea was, well, yeah. I mean, it is certainly, it's a tool of our life. Like, what would you be without your car? What would you be without, you know, your pen and pencil and typewriter and whatever? But what happened was, my idea was originally that people would learn to be a programmer and be a master of all their own solutions. And they would, you know, be able to have a problem and write a program to solve it. Everybody would learn to program. It was so easy to learn BASIC on these new machines. And right away, everybody started coming out with their own programs pre-made to do a database. A clumsy method, not exactly perfect for your task, but it could be adapted to use it. They'd come out with their own word processors and all these different programs came out, and you just buy other people's. But the spreadsheet shook things up. So it really became just better. I'll just get another program and I'll operate at a higher level for programming a spreadsheet, say.
Right. Yeah. So, in fact, the spreadsheet was an important thing in Apple's development.
Huge, in all our personal computers, actually. Because the Apple II, okay, you could load in cassette tapes and run little programs and balance a checkbook, maybe. All of a sudden, this program, VisiCalc, comes out, the first spreadsheet ever. A small businessman who's got a small business of his own walks into a computer store, and he sees this Apple II computer running VisiCalc, and now he can type in expenses and income, January, February, March, April, May, June. Make a change in January, bleep, see it instantly in June. Oh my gosh, in half an hour, he's done more work than he could do in 10 years with pencil and paper. That's a sale. And they were buying solution. The complete solution was the hardware from Apple and the software from Personal Software, and buy the solution. Then they started buying more and more boards for better spreadsheets. And that was when our market shot up 10 times and made us such a hugely successful company. We were going to have a big, successful IPO and all that.
Right. Yeah. So that was the killer app then. What's the next killer app?
If you know, you'll make $1 million. Well,
that's why I'm asking you.
I don't know. Watson on my iPhone.
Watson on your iPhone.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Cool.
Yeah.
That'd be very cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of iPhones, you don't have just one iPhone. You have multiple iPhones. Tell us what's in your backpack most of the time.
Oh gosh, my backpack. People love to hear my technology stories, but I'm almost always carrying an AT&T and a Verizon iPhone. I have two AT&T iPhones because I lucked into an old grandfathered account for unlimited international data.
Great? Yes.
For $64 a month.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. My wife's got a couple of iPhones too, one for work, one for personal. And I have a couple of Android phones, so I'm comparing them. I'm going to get a Windows phone very soon, the Lumia 900 I'm looking for. So I'm always reading the gadget pages, and I want to try as much time as I have. And I've got a million other cellular devices, MiFis and Kindles and iPads and things like that.
You are one of the happiest guys I've ever met, and I admire that and celebrate that. He absolutely is. But I think you have an underlying philosophy of your happiness that I'd like to learn more about.
Yeah.
How do I become a happy Woz?
Well, the problem is you have to think out your own clues to happiness when you're young. Like in your your personality is shaping around maybe 16 to 20 years old. And you're exploring the ways you're going to be. What are your important inside values, and they're secrets to you.
Right.
And mine were secret to me. And a lot of it was being good, knowing that my ideas were good, even if another person didn't agree with me. You don't ever have to have an argument. You think your way, I think mine, and I believe mine's right. And I can walk away, and I don't ever have to argue.
Right.
So non-conflict is a lot of what's gotten me happy in life, and that means also not making things so important. I'm going to be so upset if somebody loses an election or something like this. Very non-political, not caring about a lot of those things, because then you don't be upset all the time. What's the measure of life? How I ran my company and got this budget and did that and built these products and all that? Or is it going to be I went around all day long on the street with no job, no home, and I was just laughing and telling jokes with my friends? Which would I rather be when I die? And I decided I'd rather be the guy having fun and laughing and
Sweet.
And so I was lucky that I had the computer talents, but in all my jobs, it was so important to me to have a lot of joking with your compatriots at work,
If you can imagine yourself being born now, the age now that you were back in the Apple days, what could you imagine yourself doing?
I would think right away I'd be writing apps for the iPhone or some phone. Some phone, maybe an Android. It's probably it, because I think that's the most, exciting and open and so many things so many millions of thoughts you could have that you can have solutions for. So I'd still be a programmer, I hope. But although I was mainly a hardware guy in my prior life,
right,
but hardware's a lot different now.
Software is the way to go, you're saying?
Well, it was actually early on in Apple Faces when we came out with the Macintosh type computers, and PCs had DOS. And it turns out they had text command lines structure, and we had little moving around icons, and a picture that looked like a paint bucket would actually paint, and things that were intuitive. The difference was not in what chips you had, what memory chips you had, what processor chips, what input and output serial ports. The difference was in the software. So from then on, pretty much the difference between products, what you make your decision based on is largely software, and the other side is marketing and brand recognition.
Right, right. So, you revolutionized the industry with the Apple, and that was a different time and place, as you say. Here we are now. IBM's a big company, lots of other big companies like that. Any advice for how one can bring innovation like you embody to a large organization?
Every large organization has this problem, and things are slow, and you've got to be so sure that you're going to, the management structure is always a method of making sure this is what you're going to do. Engineers, even at Apple, got to a point before I left where you'd have to write 40 pages of documentation, every little tiny detail of how some new thing you wanted to work on was going to work before you got it budgeted. And then you couldn't, if you had some deviations, you're an engineer. Oh my gosh, I got a new idea. If I had this other chip do that, or if I pulled this off, I could save something. It's very hard. It can be a hassle to make changes like that.
Right.
Software. We have allowance procedures in Apple, but I don't know. And how do you get the most out of a worker? Like I say, if you can find some way to give them a personal meaning in their life, something more than what they're doing. I remember with that floppy disk, it was so personal to me. I actually went in late at night, night after night after night, till 4 in the morning, laying out the PC board for it. By hand. Just not even on a computer. And once I was done, I realized that I would have had, instead of 8 holes in the board, I'd only have 5 if I had designed it with the shift register going left to right instead of right to left. What did I do? Redesigned it, took it over, laid it out for another week or two, late at night till 4 in the morning, just to save 3 holes in a board. You care that much. It's like you. It's like a representation of yourself.
Right.
And that's always good to look for.
So
and also, you know what? I was hired by Hewlett Packard to design the iPhone 4 of its day, the handheld scientific calculators. I didn't have a college degree, but they interviewed me, and boy, I knew the stuff and could do it, and that was what was important. I look at most job requisitions, and you've got to have so many requirements, and there's no way to pinpoint who is the guy that will be able to write the book himself rather than just read it. Right. Who's the guy that will be able to come up with the solutions that are better than existed before? Well, they haven't done it already, so they can't be hired for the job.
It wasn't just HP you did work for, but you also did work sort of for Steve for Atari, did you not?
Yeah, not exactly for Steve. What happened was
Okay.
I saw Pong in a bowling. I was so. There was a time in my life when I was so nerdy, I never had a chance of having a girlfriend or a wife. And I worked for Hewlett Packard. So I would do calculators in the daytime at Hewlett Packard. I'd go home at night, watch Star Trek, have a TV dinner, and then I'd work on my own electronics projects, one after another, just for myself. And believe it or not, the Apple II was the 6th time I built a project just for myself. And then Steve Jobs saw it and said, here's how we can make money off it. So the Apple, but what I would do with Pong, I actually saw it in a bowling alley. And then Steve came back from Oregon, where he'd been going to school. He saw my little Pong board, a little board with 28 chips on it, playing Pong on a TV set. He ran down to Atari with it to show them like we had both designed it. And so they hired him. But apparently, what I'm told by the Atari guys, Steve didn't, he was abrasive with people. And so they put him on the night shift finally, where he worked only all alone, nobody else. But he came to me once. There was one time I didn't design it for myself. He came to me and said, "Oh, Nolan Bushnell at Atari wants this one-player Pong, and can you design it?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to. To design a game that kids are going to play would fulfill my heart. I love kids and all, and games." And he said, "Well, you have to do it in 4 days." Games were hardware, not software. Hardware. This was 6 man-months project. I said, I could try. I was like the hottest designer in the world, but I don't think I can do it. 4 days and nights, no sleep. We both got the sleeping sickness, mononucleosis, delivered a working breakout to Atari.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, so, and Steve, negotiated that deal.
Right. Tell us the first time you met Steve.
First time I met Steve was 1970. Back in high school, I had gotten to where I could design almost any computer in the world in 2 days. Yeah. And now 1970 was, IBM 360 Model 40 was beauty to me. It was as beautiful as the iPhone 4 is today, right. To my eyes.
That's great.
And, but what I did was I had a job between school years because I wanted to pay my own way to my 3rd year of college.
Right.
And at that job, an executive said he could get me the chips for a computer of my design. Yes. He heard I designed computers. Oh man, I went home, designed my own computer up. He got the chips, built it down, three houses down. I was building it at a friend's house, and the friend said, you know, you should meet this other guy from our high school, Steve Jobs, because he knows electronics well, and he likes pranks. He does pranks at school, and I was known for those 2 things. We met, we just hit it off. We were both into the same 2 things, and then we got into discussions of music and life and the importance of it. You see, I was a little older than Steve, but I was going through that, you know, how do you work out, how do you live, how do you find keys to goodness in life and being a good person, and Steve was also searching. He was younger. He was more moldable. Right. Or more, and I'm not moldable, but flexible, changeable. So, and he was more like the true hippie, and I was sort of the admirer of people who think different, counterculture, you know.
Got it.
So, yeah.
Do you miss him?
I miss him greatly, and it grows on me. At first, it was just a shock, and, you know, but it wasn't unexpected, but it's when you think back to things you did with kids, you know, people that you grew up with, you were in school with, you know, and unbelievable, you know, pranks we did together and discussions and some weird things and phoning the Pope.
Phoning the Pope. Okay. I haven't heard this story.
This one's about making a confession. We were, I had discovered this intriguing thing called a blue box, and I thought it was fiction. Steve and I figured out how to make these blue boxes that would put tones, beep, 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 like touch tones, into any American phone and dial a call for free anywhere in the world. And oh my God, we stumbled into this, and nobody knew about this thing. And to me, it was just intriguing to actually build it and accomplish it and know about it and tell people about it. Steve came along and said, I know how we can sell this. That was our first company. We could sell it in the dorms, door to door. So we would go door to door in the dorms, and we sold them, believe it or not, these illegal devices. Now, part of my, by the way, part of my life philosophy was never to hide secrets from my parents. So I even told them what I was doing.
Yes.
I think they really appreciated the fact that you're telling them. They just said, don't make any of those calls from our house. And, you know, and if you're young, you get caught. Maybe you get a slap. But, so we didn't get caught, and Steve and I sold them. And so when we were doing demos, in order to get them sold, call all sorts of hotels around the world and dial a joke lines in Sydney, Australia, and we'd do all these little fun things. I would, actually. I was the MC. So one time I got this idea, I'll call the Pope. I called the Pope. I said, I'm Henry Kissinger. I'm with Richard Nixon at the summit in Moscow, and we want to talk to the Pope. And they said, oh, it's 5:30 here in the morning. We'll have to wake him up. So by 6:30 in the morning, I got to the bishop who was going to be the translator. I started using an accent like Henry Kissinger. And the bishop said, oh, well, he just talked to Henry Kissinger, the real Henry Kissinger.
So you never got to confess to the Pope?
Not quite.
What would you have said to him if you had gotten through?
You know, I didn't think that far ahead. You make it up. You make it up.
That's very good. Wow. Okay, I don't know where to go from this.
I would tell him I have an uncle who's a Catholic priest.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were going to put in a good word for him?
I can't speak for myself. Yeah. Yeah, that's an idea.
The future of computing. We were talking about this last night. A deep one. Do you think the brain is computable?
I actually didn't think that my whole life, and then recently I've come to the conclusion that it is computable. And although we've taken steps that aren't complete in terms of things like Siri and Watson and understanding normal human things like voice, the internet has served as part of the brain. Because if you have a deep question, you now ask Google, not a person with a brain. So we didn't, but did we build the internet to be a brain, to be a wired brain? No, but we wound up with part of it by accident, part of the brain. So I think we're going to stumble onto consciousness. And it might start with the internet, which has as many nodes as we have neurons in the brain,
right.
Order of magnitude.
Do you think Watson's a step along the way?
Watson's a great step. Unbelievable. Yeah, to see that to see that happen. And it's also great to talk into my phone like a normal human being, you know. I'd like a reservation for 6 at 8 p.m. Wednesday night at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, and it does it.
Yeah.
And you know, or navigate to MGM Grand, and it does it.
Let's talk about education again, because I know you love teaching kids, and you have so many kids that you have inspired over the years. I sort of have this feeling that there's a digital generation that's been born that doesn't understand much at all about computing. What do we need to say to that generation? How do we empower them?
There are, of course, some specialty schools that deal with just technology and education, mathematics, that sort of stuff, and they go a long ways, but it's not like in the masses. The problem is, normal schools, what is a teacher going to teach? They're only going to teach what they know, what they were taught. So the course you get in, I'm thinking way down to elementary school. Because you know what? By the time you're in 3rd grade, 8 years old, you've decided whether education is important or not, and the teachers can see which students have dropped out.
Yeah.
The ones doing poorly in 3rd don't do better in 4th, they don't come back in 5th. You know, it's sort of like they've made a decision.
Yeah.
And that's part of the education structure is you learn the same pages in the book every day as all the other students in your class, and then you get tested. And you know what? That testing, Johnny's good, I'm not going to try. You get too much of that, and you get, so in the public schools is what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah, it's very difficult. But I always thought that once computers were so important, the most important academic tool of our life is in the early days of personal computers even, they're going to teach programming, they're going to teach computers in school how they work, and they never did. They taught, here's how you type. Well, it's just a different typing machine.
Yeah.
So, and that's called computer literacy. And when I taught my classes how to use your computer to make every assignment in school look good, be presented well, and solved well, that was 200 hours a year, even for 5th graders. It's a deep, deep course. So they give a student, you know, a few hours and they call it computer literacy. And I said, well, that's not really understanding what's going on in the computer, what is RAM, what is hard disk, how are they used, how are they storing things, what are ones and zeros. So I'm disappointed that the world didn't get more into that. We learned a lot of mathematics you'll never use in life, but boy, the logic of computer science, programming, knowing how to write a program to solve your own problems. I like to use puzzles. You can see puzzles in the newspaper. You can go to the store and buy little kits of puzzles. You can write a program for every one of those. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing to do in life, and kids love doing that. And there's nothing in programming or even actually computer design, except for some few little analog stuff, that is beyond 5th grade mathematics. So, and young kids, yeah, love to learn it, but we're just not giving it to them. We're saying, here are the things you learn in life and that are important, and very few find it accidentally. They accidentally stumble down a path of discovering they're great at computers and they're selling software by the time they're 10 or 16. Yeah.
Do you still program?
I don't program much anymore. I don't have the time, but actually once in a while I would. I would. But probably in a simpler languages like AppleScript.
Right. Any regrets if you look back over your career, anything you would have done different other than maybe not call the Pope?
Well, no, actually, no regrets at all. I come up with one of these lives where you don't want to go back and look and say, what if we had done this? What if we had licensed the Macintosh operating system? You don't want to look at that because you don't really have the answer.
Right.
You don't know the answer. Even Steve Jobs would tell me he doesn't know if we should have or shouldn't have, but maybe we should have. But that's not a regret.
Right.
So I just don't want to live a life of regrets.
Right.
There was one little tiny regret, which was when I was writing my BASIC. I wrote out the entire syntax of the entire BASIC language from a Hewlett-Packard BASIC manual. I had never programmed in BASIC. I didn't know the language. I had to write it and learn it, and then I had to write a program that did it. But in doing that, I wrote it all out, and then I thought, oh my gosh, if I will get famous like Bill Gates, if I'm the first one to write a BASIC for the 6502 microprocessor, people in all these little clubs will know my name. So what I did was I stripped out the floating point part of it, numbers with decimal points. I stripped that out so I could get done quicker because I was a mathematician we used integers to even calculate sines and cosines on our HP calculators and things. And that's all you need for games, and it's more direct and it's faster. I stripped it out to save 1 month in writing the language.
Sweet. And
even though I wrote the floating point routines, wrote an article on it in a magazine, put it in the ROM on the Apple II, it wasn't in the BASIC. And so a little while later, Microsoft popped in the door, Bill Gates himself, and said, well, we have a BASIC with floating point that will run on your machine. And I adapted it with some graphics routines and all that stuff and some disk routines. And sure enough, it worked. And so we licensed it. Now, 5 years later, all of the revenues of our company, Apple, were coming from the Apple II. And the license expired. So they kind of had us, where they wanted us for other little privileges like GUI operating systems and stuff.
Last question.
Yeah.
Tell me something you must do before you die.
I only have two things really that I come to my mind right now on my bucket list: to see Ayers Rock and Tasmania. I don't know why I only have
And to see William
Oh,
Shatner.
and well, that's not on my list really. But and to get 750,000 on Game Boy Tetris, the original Game Boy Tetris.
All right. Good. How close are you? How close have you gotten?
I had 702,000 a long time ago, but I think
Keep
I might
working
make
on
it.
it.
I might make it.
Let me bring out Scott. I think you've got some Twitter questions from the crowd. Scott, where are you? There you are. Come join us.
Hey, guys. I'm feeling a little overdressed here, so hold on.
I'm just going to read it.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a bunch of questions people have been asking Woz on Twitter.
Okay.
So I got them here, but the first one actually comes from Rebecca Swanek, who is the conference manager who has done such a great job with this conference. She's been following you very closely on Twitter for...
Hey, Rebecca.
She loves following you and looking at all the different restaurants you've been going to.
Well, you know what? I don't have the time to use the social web. So I don't use Facebook and I don't use Twitter, but I got Foursquare. I said, good. Foursquare is the only one I don't have thousands of friends. I only have a few people I know. So I check into places on Foursquare and it shares it on Twitter and Facebook. So everybody thinks that's my Twitter life. But
So she wants to know what's your favorite restaurant.
Favorite restaurant? I'm going to say it's a Mexican restaurant called the Jalisco that I've never checked in at hardly because I started on a low-carb diet, so I'm not going there now. It's a Mexican restaurant in Campbell, California, and a very different atmosphere and really it's been a part of my life for, I don't know, 40, they're going there 35 years or so.
Okay. Yeah. We got another question here. So I think in about 10 minutes or so, out in San Francisco, apparently Apple's announcing the iPad 3. So, and you're here.
Yeah, and I regret that I can't be on my computer waiting for the store to come back up so I can get my order in, just like a normal person. And, and if it comes out on the 16th, gosh darn, I have a speech somewhere on the 16th. Could I wait in line all night that night and still make my speech? Maybe. I'd love to do that. You know, it's like waiting in line when you're in college for a concert ticket to the Rolling Stones. I mean, you'll wait all night and be one of the first ones to buy a ticket. So these are important events in life to me.
So you don't have the iPad 3 here. You don't get that? No?
I can't say.
So we got another interesting question here. We'll shift gears a little bit here. So, can we predict and prevent terrorist strikes and attacks leveraging the wisdom of crowds?
The wisdom, because of using the wisdom of crowds?
Yeah, like, you know,
Wow.
you're looking around here and you're...
I think that terrorists try to be very secretive and hidden, and I'm not sure. I don't know. I do know one thing, that when I was pulling a lot of pranks, I learned how not to get caught. You don't tell a soul. You tell one person that you think you trust, man, it leaks a little bit, no. So, but I don't know. I think that terrorist detection is done a lot electronically now. Email and all that. Not very many people use encryption.
And we threw that in just to prove that we really are taking real questions here. I would have never came up with that one. So what's it like tinkering in the garage, you know, going to computer fairs, showing off the Apple one with Steve in the early days? Just going around?
Well, that was pretty amazing because, first of all, I got inspired by all these social changes that computers were going to mean, and I said, I'm good at designing computers. I finally saw the formula to design one that I could afford, that was the computer I wanted, and it wasn't the computer I built 5 years before, the one when I met Steve Jobs. That was a computer with switches and lights, a front panel, if you will. Push a button and some ones and zeros go into memory. This was going to be a computer you could really type programs into, and I saw that the formula was possible. And I said, I'm going to design it. And then, of course, I was designing it for the other people in my club. So what did I do? I passed out the schematics. I passed out the listings. No copyright notices. No intent to have a company. And then Steve came by and saw it. He came back from Oregon from he was working on an orchard or something up there. And he came back and he said, oh my gosh, we could sell this too. We can make a PC board. At first he said we can make a PC board for 20 bucks and sell it for 40 because we didn't have any money. So we couldn't make a computer. But one thing snowballed into another, and Hewlett-Packard kept turning me down. So that was just the most exciting time in life, because we're talking about a revolution, and part of the world was saying, oh, it's going to be nothing, not important financially. And from everything they had to make their decisions with, they were probably right. But then who would ever expect that something like Game Boy would come about? Or market research. IBM's market research would have been all the people using computers. Would they have a need for a tiny machine based on a microprocessor? Oh, no, the tasks they're doing would never be fulfilled by that. And the trouble is, they didn't have a way to do market research among people that didn't use computers yet. Dentists, teachers, lawyers, doctors, you know, those kind of people. All of us, so engineers. So there was a market there, but it was really hard to predict. And that was kind of neat because it gave us a lot of motivation and spirit that part of the world didn't believe it. And we thought we were onto a revolution. We're changing things. We're doing something as important as, you know, the revolution of the United States, you know. So that's how it was for us.
Yeah, no, really,
and every little 2 weeks when somebody showed something off new at the club, oh my God, the world has changed forever. Things are and after we started Apple, every week or so something new came out. Oh my gosh, the world is never going to be the same. It's so much changed so quickly. It was very radical at first.
So were things changing more rapidly back, let's say, in the 90s or now?
Oh my gosh, things are changing much more rapidly now, I think, because the ways we're doing the mobile transition, and the way everything you do in your life, and all the apps are starting to define my life and my abilities, and they're just exploding. So many people can write apps, and young people and old people, and you don't have to be a real big, huge corporation to have a successful app on a phone, yet it can be so useful. And almost every business incorporating iPads and iPhones and stuff like that into their own communication structure. So now I think things are changing very fast right now. And we're getting to the point where the computers are getting much more human. I mean, the Macintosh was a huge change because all of a sudden things were sort of human. Instead of a screen, you had a human desktop. And you had words like pages. You had words that were human words. You had pictures that looked like things they represented. So that was a huge change, but that towards the humanness. Even back in the Apple II days, when somebody put out a little board you could plug in your Apple II, and it spoke with a natural human voice instead of like some little computer squeaky voice, that was really good. And it was good and attractive. It was a step towards humanism. And now we're getting to where we're talking to our phones like they're a person. We don't have to be careful about our words. We don't have to be careful about our grammar. We just speak in a natural thought, and it seems to understand us sometimes. I think that's the future, is Siri turning into Watson. That might be a big direction in the future. And look at the little iPhone I carry in my pocket. Is it going to be a best friend ever? Well, it's already got senses that I as a human have. It can sense touch. like I can. It can hear. It can see with a camera. It knows when it's moving like your inner ear. Now, it can tell where it is in the world with GPS, and when I wake up, I don't know where I am. But I can still smell, and I can taste. So we got to, maybe those are the real cues to getting a conscious computer. It's got to want taste.
I have a follow-up. Mark Zuckerberg and Eric Schur have both said, not Eric Schur, Eric Schmidt. Eric. Sure, thank you. Yeah, wrong,
You're like
Eric.
Me. You're like me on these
Eric,
things.
the guy from Google. I'm terrible with names. I want an app that I can point at somebody and say, oh, that's so-and-so, and you really don't want to talk with them because last time you insulted them or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I used to, talk to my young son who's really, gifted in computer science, about virtual reality and what you can do, and he would point out to me, oh, no, AR, augmented reality. Yeah, augmented reality is just so beautiful, and the apps I've used, they're fun so far, but everything great starts out as fun. So what you're saying, I think we're getting very close to, a lot of people are working on exactly what you described.
Yeah.
Some sort of glasses that kind of put up little notes like you see in the movies, telling you this is so-and-so, age, and...
So these two guys whose last names I can't remember, they say privacy is dead. What do you think?
Unfortunately, you know what? I was one of the slow ones to come along and realize that, because I had other friends that just pointed out, every time you spoke, they're doing this and it's going to take some privacy away from us. Steve, we've already lost it all, so who cares? You know what? I just realized, how much privacy do you have? Yeah. Everywhere you go, every transaction you do, there's little cameras watching you anywhere. I try to think of how I would do a perfect crime and avoid detection. It's very difficult.
It's a good...
Very difficult. I mean, even things like, can I tell my phone it's in a different place? Well, I can either plug in a phony GPS or I can create a GPS signal, but my phone is still going to link into some cell tower in Sacramento where I do the murder.
You could have gone down a really different path, couldn't you?
My sister predicted I'd either be in jail or famous.
Well, it worked out pretty well for you.
Yeah, things are moving more rapidly now than they were 10 years ago. What about in 2020?
In my mind, things are going so fast. But, as we get older, too, you watch the young kids, you don't even understand what they're doing and the fullness of their little mobile computing life. And I never thought I'd get to that way, that I couldn't communicate with all the young kids about computers and technology and how to use it.
But
that makes it seem like it's moving faster yet.
Today. But what about in 2020? 10 years from now, will it be moving even faster?
I think it's going to become very much more invisible and natural, and might be just like your watch, like the iPod Nano that you can scroll through. I think you'll just pick it up and ask it questions all day long, like you normally would ask people questions, or you'd look at an encyclopedia and try to get a few answers about the world and where you are and something that comes up. I really want that future. I want answer engines. I don't want search engines.
So the question here is, at what point in the future will the innovation start to slow down? Because we've been on this accelerating path. Is it 2050? Is it 20 never? At some point...
Sure, but you're asking a question nobody can answer.
I didn't answer
is there a God?
Yeah, so we're just going to keep going, right?
Yeah, how old is the universe? When is the universe going to end? I don't know. But we have this desire in us to always create things and to change them, and to come up with every change we sort of see as being better. A little improvement of one sort, a little improvement of another. And we use mathematics, we use science, we create new materials, and who knows when we're going to someday discover a new material that works its way up the chain for another 100 years, changing all technology it's based on. Optical computing, maybe that'll come.
One thing that strikes me about knowing you in your life is that I get the sense it's not the technology that's interesting. It keeps going and going, but it's a matter of remaining human in the midst of that and enjoying life.
Well, in Apple, especially, it became very important to me from a guy that came into Apple and taught Steve Jobs and I that you can it's human versus technology. The human is important. What you have to do is put all the effort into making the technology work the human ways, the natural human ways, or you can make the human have to relearn everything and do it the technology way, and that's where the technology is more important. So I've always been such a fan of the human should be more important, and this humanness, and I've seen the effects of it when it's in the computer. It drags students to want to look at a screen if it seems more like a human. I think someday, once we have the conscious computer, it'll be a great teacher, a replacement for a human. And I actually see kids walking around with their little products saying, "This is my best friend. Get out of my life. It knows me. You don't know me." To their own parents.
Is that a good? Is that a good thing?
Is that a good thing? You know, there's different. I think that when it's happening, people will say it's good. The people doing it will say it's good. So we're sort of judging it from our perspective of having grown up with newspapers and real paper books and things like that. And it's just sort of like some days, if you can't beat them, join them.
All right, back to the questions here. So given your experience with innovation at Apple, what advice would you give IBM?
You know, first of all, Apple, when we founded Apple, and we had one funder, and he was really the mentor, the older person that had run business before. He told Steve Jobs that his role would be to learn how to do everything. Every department works in a company. My role would be engineering. We'd have to hire a president to make sure all the right things are being attended to, get a couple operations guys, an accountant. He sort of was the mentor that really made Apple. And he said, and he was the one who made the comment about IBM is just a group of people, and we can create products just as well as they can. And what was the question exactly? Oh, yeah, what advice would I give? Okay, well, one thing he said, first day we're in our little tiny, you know, our first office was about the size of this stage. And he said to Stephen, I said, you know, we're going to be a marketing-driven company. Because I came from Hewlett-Packard in the days when it only built products for engineers, and it was totally engineering-driven, because every engineer designing things was designing them for engineers, and they were part of the market. But now we're going to be a marketing-driven company. He said that's the most important thing, you know, knowing that he had been in engineering and he'd been in marketing and Intel. And he said IBM is so powerful and successful because they are a marketing-driven company. So it's really understanding the needs of customers and having a good feel for, you know, products and pricing, how you make products look. What are your advertisements like? They're showing images of how you know, given the brain ideas that aren't necessarily written in words. So we've always been very admiring of IBM in that regard. As far as innovation within the company, you know, you've almost got to have it as a major goal from the top down. Because even in Apple, it's easy to see that you can have a very innovative top level, and then middle layers of management can really destroy things, and there's no way to ever get to them all and watch them all. There's no way to judge when a manager gets stale. A manager really has got to appreciate, make the people underneath him feel like they're so important, and what they're doing is going to make them so outstanding. And put those personal meanings into the work they're doing. You know, it's hard to say what it is, and also be attentive to who's really got some good ideas. They don't have to come from above. At Hewlett-Packard, when we worked there, we had a company philosophy. The best ideas were up and down. Communication could be any level in the company, and most of the great products that drove the divisions for the next 10 years would just come from an engineering group. You know, bottom of the org chart. So I felt really good then. I always wanted that kind of feeling. I don't even think Apple came that far.
Interesting. I like that answer. Rebecca, we got to get a clip of
the marketing. And as Steve Jobs would say, it's still best for any product that you've got. I think that developing things in secret and not paying attention to what's been done before, not being hung up on what's been done before, we're going to design the best way it could be done today. You've got to have a very closed environment. You can't have people that are really out in the open being judged by a whole bunch of other people. Even other divisions of the company really can't see it. I think that's very helpful to Apple. And you've also got to have one mind in the end that envisions the total product, software, hardware, and says, does this really feel good to me and play well? Does it seem awkward? Does it seem to have too many things? And saying no is a very big part of it. So I always admired, I'm talking about Steve Jobs, really, yeah. you know, but it was like when we started, I was easy. I had a market of one person, myself, and it was one mind doing all the hardware, all the software. Everything had to work well. So our starting product was very good along those lines.
Two last questions. Okay. So this week at this conference, we spent a lot of time talking about cloud computing. What's your definition of the cloud and the benefits you see over the years to come?
Cloud is really too hard probably to define concretely. So, you know, just think of it as the internet, the unknown areas. And at first we were afraid of the cloud. Would I put my valuable stuff on the cloud when hard disks are so cheap? And the answer to me was always, eventually we will, because the advantages of the cloud are you don't have to maintain it. You don't have to manage it. You don't have to watch for viruses. You don't have to do the updates. It all happens naturally and invisibly, and that's good. But I thought, well, you take your money and you put it in a bank. A bank is sort of a cloud. Your money's just in some account somehow, somewhere, and you trust it. So we will eventually trust all of our most valuable things to be on the cloud. Right now, I'm a little afraid of the cloud, and I think it's going to get worse and worse and worse in some behaviors for the future. because it's just over and over. You don't own one thing on the cloud. I'm thinking, as a consumer, I don't own one of my things that's on the cloud. I think I own them, but somebody else owns them. I can't guarantee that something that works today isn't going to be changed, and all of a sudden it doesn't work, and nobody tells me, and nobody tells me why. Nobody informs me it's going to happen. I have to go search online and figure it out after 5 hours, or a feature gets dropped. Totally dropped from the cloud, and it's something was an important part of my life, my calendar. Now I've got to totally convert over to some other kind of calendar. So I have a lot of experiences on the cloud. I used to call my wife in my car by pressing the button on my iPhone and saying, call Janet Mobile. And now that we got Siri, I press the button, and sometimes it says, you're not on the internet because the Siri servers are down or not answering. They're busy. And so, oh my gosh, when it was built in, I could do it. And so I want a lot of local backups. Local backups. In other words, I'll trust the cloud to back up my computer, but I still want my FireWire hard disk that I can boot from in an emergency. I want that one backed up too.
Okay. So final question.
Yeah.
You're going to share with us your moves that you learned on Dancing with the Stars?
I'm not going to share. I'm in the after union, so union rules. You'd have to pay me. It was hard.
Not easy, huh?
No.
What are the harder things you've done?
It was so hard. It was so scary. It was so much sweat. You just can't look at somebody doing some steps and do it unless you're a 10-year-old girl. It's like a cheerleader routine, and it can take you 4 weeks, 7 days a week, 6 hours a day to learn one little minute-and-a-half dance. And you're afraid you're not going to learn it. Everybody is so scared of that show. And I don't watch TV, so when they called up, I said, what is Dancing with the Stars? That is something, but you know what? I don't really ever try to pursue a career in Hollywood, but I've been lucky because I've been on the great ones, Dancing with the Stars and The Big Bang Theory, so I don't have to go looking.
Yeah. That's great.
All right, well, unfortunately, it's time to wrap up. Thank you very much for joining us here in Vegas.
Yes, okay.
Once again, thank you.
Oh, it's been great chatting with you guys.
It's a big hand of applause, guys. Yes. Okay, so you guys are heading back, right? All right. Well, it's time to attend the last day of sessions and visit the Solution Expo. So just before you head home later today, don't forget to fill out the evaluation forms. You get your free Smarter Planet t-shirt. In addition, please make sure that you join us at a Pulse Comes to You in a country near you coming out soon. And hopefully we'll see you back here in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand, March 3rd through the 6th next year. Let's make this an annual thing. Thank you very much for being here. Have safe travels.